So what Transcontinental tries to do differently, does differently, is just put 10 rules down. And in 10 rules you can't possibly cover all the gaps, cover all the eventualities, not on something so big. So these rules then don't become every eventuality. They become the guiding set of principles. There's 10 there. Of the 10, possibly number 10 is the most important. It says ride in the spirit of self-reliance and equal opportunity. And that's sort of setting out the intent, really. And then you can trace a lot back to say, well, that means, self-sufficiency means you do your own navigation. So if somebody's plotted your route for you, or you end up riding with somebody else and you follow the exact same route, that can be said to be against that. So there's quite a lot of margin in there for interpretation. And who interprets that? Well, that is my job, to interpret these rules. It's my job to set out the rules, to communicate the intent of how the rules, why the rules exist. I'm going to be talking about that a bit later. And the intent of what we mean by them. So that's why I go with, rather than laying out every rule up front, I go with laying out the components and the spirit and the basic tenets of the rules in this. And then I reserve the right to make the interpretation of those and give the judgments. So it's my job then to be fair. And I say, and we say in the race manual, that you may not find out about that till after the race, because every race is different, every race goes from a different set of circumstances and so on, and sometimes it's only by looking what everybody's done that it becomes more obvious what the fair thing to do is, to consider everybody's effort at that one goal and judge who went about it fairly and who needs compensating because they took a decision like riding on a highway and everybody else didn't, for example. So that's what it do, and there's something to be said about being vague in those circumstances. It gives me room to manoeuvre and say, yes, that can be covered in the rules, and yes, I can apply fairness to that. And so long as I do things out of fairness, that I'm not corrupt or biased or can be bought or any of these things, that stands up. That can be my rationale about being fair can be expressed. And if people trust that we're being fair to people, then they can go into the race not with this set of rules, this big set of rules will go, oh, I know those and I know where they break down and I can take opportunity. They go into the race with a feeling of, right, I've got to be fair to the other people in this, because that's how the race director and about how the judgment and the interpretation of the rules is going to be levied at the end. So I use my best judgment on what's fair to everybody, and then if they think I've been fair, they'll be fair on me. And so it comes with a pending sense of, I'll say it, but a pending sense of judgment at the end. So you don't know what criteria, you know the criteria, but you don't know exactly what the letter of the judgment is going to be. So you have to use your judgment in fairness. And that is a huge amount of the spirit of the races. We want people to think about it and think about what's fair and not to look for gaps in the rule. That defines our community. That defines everybody who lines up on the start of the race together and they look at each other is, I'm going to be fair to you. And the person I finish ahead of is going to be happy that I finished ahead of them. And I'm going to be happy with the person who finished ahead of me, and behind me, that we all did it together, and I can look them in the eye and go, you know, I didn't, because that's, when you look at a blunt set and a cold set of printed rules, and you try and work your way an advantage through the gaps in those, you're not looking at a human problem. You're not looking at your co-competitors on the start line and going, well, actually, I want to screw you over by doing this. You want to be able to look them in the eye, shake their hand and go, you and me, we're going to do this in the right way, and whatever happens, you know, we can say we did that. And that, with the trust in the independent person who doesn't race, who can't race, who won't race because of this, they're saying, okay, I'm going to give that responsibility to arbitrate to somebody else, and it's going to come afterwards. And that, for me, is how we get 10 rules onto this card. It's having 10 rules, and it's having a person who makes sense of them and who people trust to be fair to other people. And that person needs to define what their sense of fairness is. They've got to create a sense of ethos and a sense of community around the race, so everybody kind of gets a feel for that's trustworthy. And they need to be fair to people. That's what I try to do, and I take that very seriously.